Hopefully I can sync that up. Welcome back, everybody. It's the week of August 19th. And where is my audio level? All right. Looks like I'm doing it. So, again, August 19th, the week of. And had a couple of things, a couple of housekeeping things. One, if you are a current subscriber, thank you very much for subscribing. If you're not, please consider doing so. Hit subscribe below. If you want to buy me a cup of coffee, please feel free to do so. If you would like to chat with me encryptedly and securely, please use the Signal link. I think a lot of you have figured out how to use that. That's my dogs fighting each other. I don't know what's going on. A lot of people have been commenting to me encryptedly via Signal. And, of course, the email, the old-fashioned email system is down there also if you would like to use that. So, last episode we had some further discussion relative to the Lakemore officer-involved shooting. I received several comments that thought maybe I was too harsh on the Lakemore administration, that certain people felt that they had probably had the opportunity to correct their training issues, and I hope that is correct. I hope it's true. I hope they have been able to correct their training. And I often go back and think to myself of when I got into law enforcement a long time ago, and this is back. We've come, folks. For anybody out there that's not familiar with law enforcement has come a huge amount of distance since 1999. No, well, I got hired in East Cleveland in 99. I'm trying to think when I went to the academy. 96, maybe, I think. 96. So, I'm pretty sure, 96-007. 96-007 was my academy class number, which was sort of cool. I think it was 96. If it wasn't 96, it was 95. I can't remember which. But anyways, we've come a tremendous amount of distance. When I first got hired in 95 or 96, whatever it was, you have all of these small departments, and stick with me. Okay, this is going to tie back into my comments relative to Lakemore, okay? But you had all of these smaller departments, and I'm assuming Lakemore is, and I intend on going out and getting some B-roll coverage or footage of Lakemore, because I don't know for certain that I know where it is or what it is, how big it is. So we're gonna do this together. I'm gonna go out and get some B-roll coverage of Lakemore, Ohio, and but I have a feeling, just from research on the internet, that it's a smaller village, it's a smaller department. And so when I came out and said, hey, do better, Lakemore administration. So when I first got hired in 95 or 96, I'll give you a prequel. Like officers, when they get hired on a lot of these smaller departments, and I sincerely hope things have changed since then, but you would essentially go in, you would apply, and they would run what's called a CCH on you, which is through LEADS. And LEADS is the Law Enforcement Automated Data System, and that's the system that ties into FBI and local and state police agencies. So when you get pulled over and they run your license plate, they are doing it through LEADS, and they're able to ascertain whether or not you have current driving privileges anywhere in the United States by running you through LEADS. They are able to ascertain whether or not you have warrants anywhere in the United States through LEADS. All right. So when you run a CCH, there has to be specific reasons to run CCH. You can't just run willy-nilly people's CCHs. but it's still a rather low threshold of a reason that you need. But generally, it has to be like some sort of investigation or arrest, or hiring for law enforcement, or the criminal justice system. I believe is actually there's like reason. It's called reason codes. Thank you, reason codes, and you would have to select what reason code you wanted. And employment for criminal justice is one of those reason codes to run someone's CCH. But anyways, so you're getting hired, and the reason I go off in left fields is I've had comments before about making statements and or comments about certain things, and people may not know what I'm talking about, so I have to stop and sort of go back. So I apologize if I'm off in the weeds. If everybody knows what leads is and a CCH is, I apologize in advance. But there are those that don't, and that's the reason this channel's here. So don't feel... I just sometimes lose my train of thought and sort of assume that everybody knows, and you know what they say about assuming. But anyways, so when you get hired back in 95, 96 in these smaller villages, they would run your CCH and see if you had been arrested before. And that was pretty much your background check right back then. I don't think I ever was drug tested and or credit checked, or I don't think they even went out and talked to any of my neighbors up until I got hired in East Cleveland. So I won't disparage the departments I worked at prior, but there were several small villages I worked for, and there was no background check. And as lax as their background check was also as lax as their training was. And this is what ties back into what I was talking with Lakemore. So when I got hired in one specific place that I, again, won't disparage, I get hired there, and essentially you get a map. Here are the codified ordinances. Here are the keys to the car. Somebody will relieve you in 8 hours. A lot of these departments, again, it's just a single officer agency that is on the road, 24 hours a day. There's usually only one officer in smaller agencies. And so, again, that was one thing that I was contrasting with Lakemore. I was surprised that there were actually 2 officers on duty, and I don't know. I actually meant to go back and look at the day of the week and so on and so forth, because sometimes they're, on busier days, weekends, things like that, there are overlapping shifts. So you might have actually 2 officers for a couple of hours. But most of these departments, smaller agencies, it's 1 officer. And so, again, they would give you keys to the car. Here's codified ordinance. Here's a map. Here's a radio. Go out and patrol. And that was your training. And so when I see these incidents occur, like the incident for Lakemore officer-involved shooting, it distresses me, it disheartens me that maybe things are still going that way, because that's completely unacceptable at this point, right? Regardless of how small the agency is, it may take longer for that officer to get trained. I used to, fast forwarding to East Cleveland, officers were in an FTO for a minimum of 1 year when I got hired. So for 1 year, you were with a field training officer. And as time progressed, and nobody wanted to be the police anymore, there were shortages, people retiring, people going to other departments. It wasn't hard to to dangle a carrot in front of anybody that worked in East Cleveland, because you didn't make any money in East Cleveland. So it wasn't hard for other departments to steal your good officers away from you. And it got to the point where when I was chief that it was down to like 6 months. And even prior to me being chief, and it was something that I fought tooth and nail with the chief at the time, who is usually a watcher and listener to this show. So hopefully he'll send me a message here, because I used to fight all the time. Hey, this person has only been on the road for 3 months with an FTO. They need to be here longer. And there was a couple of incidents that I felt the officers got into very volatile situations and I have a specific incident in mind, and I don't want to put the officer on blast. I think he's actually chief of police for another agency now at this point. That isn't that far from me, where I reside, and again, it's another smaller department. So I'm hoping that he watches this and he understands what I'm saying, because I feel that he was the product of poor training, and because of that poor training, it ended up costing him his job in East Cleveland. And I'm very thankful that he was able to salvage that and go out to another department, because it was one of those instances where he didn't deserve it. He didn't deserve to lose his job, and it was solely because of the lack of training. He was put on the road way too soon. And this is tying in again to Lakemore. I'm hoping departments and agencies are doing better. I'm hoping that that's not the case in Lakemore, but it appears it is. There was just a lot of training issues that I observed just in that one, the two body-worn cameras, just for those short periods of time that I saw the body-worn camera activated. I was able to articulate to you 4 points that I thought were egregious as far as training and never should have happened. And that, again, even the reports that were written, supervisors should have caught those. But anyways, there were some comments made to me that they felt that I was being too harsh on the administration for Lakemore Police. And I was being harsh. But because I want them to do better. And I don't care what kind of agency you have. I don't care how long it takes. I mean, it might take you an extra several months to put an officer out by himself, and I know it sucks. I know manning sucks right now for any police agency. Nationwide, all police agencies are down. Manning is down. Manpower is down. But you can't just hand the keys like the old days. You can't just hand the keys over to a cruiser and say, here, go out and do your job after the academy. Because the academy, I also went to law school much later in my life. Didn't actually complete it. I'm considered like a 2L for the attorneys out there. I went through 2 years of law school. And law school is very similar to the police academy. Because the training that you learn, it really has no influence of what you do once you're done. As a matter of fact, a lot of FTOs basically say, hey, take that book you got, the SPO book, Student Performance Objectives is what it used to be called. I have no idea if that's still the term or not, but they were SPOs, and you would have this huge binder of SPOs. You would have to know for each objective, whatever it was. Search warrants, you would have to have 15 SPOs that you would have to know, because those are the things that you were tested on. It could have been, 3 out of those 15, 1 out of those 15, and maybe 5 from another subject, whatever. And those SPOs were in this huge book. And so I remember my FTO in East Cleveland basically said, hey, take that, because, you were supposed to, once you got out of the academy, you took those SPOs with you. You were supposed to take them to training. And so I remember going into the car with my FTO in East Cleveland, and he's like, what is that? Throw that out the window. I didn't. That's littering. But the point was, whatever you learn in the academy, it's going to have no bearing on once you're actually on the road into the department. Same thing with law school. Law school is actually taught mostly from common law, and it's not necessarily even applicable to any state. So most states, all 50 states, somehow have derived from common law. So you get a basic premise of what the law is supposed to be and what it's about. But law school is the same. You go through law school, you learn about common law, but it's not applicable when you graduate and you go to whatever state bar you're taking the test at and get licensed at. So, again, going back, was I too harsh on Lakemore? Maybe, but I meant to be harsh, and I'm hoping that someone from the administration for Lakemore is watching, because I'm hoping never to see or never hear of an incident like that occur again because of lack of training, and I think that that's what caused the issues for that officer, was the lack of training. So, moving on. I was probably a little longer than I anticipated on that topic, but moving on, ads. Gotten a lot of comments about ads. Yes, folks, there are ads now, and I've I've heard some. So I've gotten some messages relative to some of those ads. Someone, and they could have been totally joshing with me. I don't know, joking with me, but they were saying that there were some landscaping and manscaping ads, and I don't know. I don't really have any control necessarily over that. There are certain things that I have found that you can go in there, and so I think I took out like politics and religion. I think that's what I took out. I can't remember, but there are subjects that you can take out that if you don't want them on your channel, and so I did take out several of those things, even though I am, I don't know, I probably have strayed with the events of my life, but I was deeply a religious, self-religious person. But I understand that that's a taboo subject that you don't want to talk about, so I didn't want ads rolling on my channel in that respect. So, again, I apologize about the ads. Hopefully, maybe you see something on the ads that you want to buy, because those ads, again, help support this channel. Along with buying me a cup of coffee supports the channel. Becoming a member, it's at $2.99. I just literally worked on the emojis. Are they emojis? I can't remember what they're called. The little GIFs, symbols for members when they leave comments, but it's hard sometimes to get comments left on this channel because everybody's worried that MikeOMalley is going to indict them. But the GIFs have been updated for members, and that's essentially all at this point. I think it's only $2.99 a month at this point. I picked the lowest package just to basically launch the members, just so I could learn what it is, and hopefully I will continue to grow with that. Add some content and some videos that will be members only, essentially, is what that's supposed to be for. So other things that we're going to be discussing, we're obviously going to be, I'll have another small update from some East Cleveland activities, East Cleveland Indictments, resolutions, failures. I would report. That's how I would describe it. Failure on the prosecutor's office. Yes, they were pleas, and I'm sure that they will count those as wins. But the plea was disorderly conduct, which is pretty much a traffic ticket. So I think it's a abysmal failure. And that was after they pretty much were probably going to lose the case. The attorney had filed for a speedy rights trial violation. And I think the judge probably would have entertained it. And I imagine I wasn't part of those conversations, but I probably venture to say that judge probably said to the prosecutor, you better make a sweet deal to this guy, because you're going to lose everything if you don't. But I don't know. Don't know that for certain. But I think that that's probably it. Also, a lot of people have commented, and I did see early the O'Malley story relative to Robert T. George, and I am digging into that. I'll talk about it a little bit just to bring everybody and the viewers up to speed of where we are if they're not familiar with that incident. And I've already started my public records request mountain on that incident, and we'll see what we can come up with. But it's a slow roll with public records requests, as I'm becoming very more familiar with, especially with Cuyahoga County. Anytime you have to do anything with Cuyahoga County, I have filed a claim with the court. I have filed a claim with the Ohio Court of Claims against Cuyahoga County because I believe them to be violating my rights for some records that I had requested. They're trying to prevent me from having. We'll see how that goes. But anyways, we'll come back. We're already at 20 minutes, and it's going to be a short show because, again, I'm waiting on a lot of records to come in on some other things. I do want to include some B-roll footage from Lakemore, and that will be probably coming up on the next segment. And then, obviously, I want to talk about this O'Malley connection with Robert George. And we are back for our next episode here. Episode 21. So I had the opportunity, and I'm not trying to beat a dead horse with this, but I went over to Lakemore to get some B-roll just to see if what I suspected was true. As far as being a smaller agency, smaller village, it honestly was very difficult to even find the boundaries. I don't know if anybody lives over there or wants to comment, send me a message. I couldn't even honestly even find the incorporated signs. I saw incorporated signs for Springfield Township, but Lakemore, essentially, from what I am gathering and understand, I mean, we can probably look at a Google map and figure it out, but it looks like it's on the back end of the Springfield Lake. And a lot of streets, a lot of little streets. It sort of honestly reminds me of where I grew up. And I did take some B-roll footage of the lake. Apparently there's a park here. Sort of a ominous sign here. Danger, avoid all contact with water. Toxins have been found, unsafe levels. But anyways, it's a really cool looking lake. I guess this is the Springfield Lake. I grew up on a small lake, probably very similar to this. It's also very interesting. I only see one boat. Well, there might be two over there, but I see a pontoon dock right there. I see some boats way out over here in the, if I can figure out where my finger is, way out in the distance over there. But not a lot of boats docked here. But sort of a really cool lake. It's like a park area here. Which also reminded me of where I grew up, and I think I make comments while I'm filming that it's sort of odd though, because there's very few boats that are docked that I saw. There were maybe 3 boats, a pontoon boat and a couple of other little boats that appeared to be on the same dock. But anyways, ironically, I did pass one of the cruisers. I went to the station. Got some footage of that. They had a nice little Veterans Memorial set up. Took some photos of that. And I went past the golf course. where this incident took place. I was trying to take photographs, but it's actually on a very busy road, and every time I tried to pass it, it was almost impossible. So the footage I'm actually enclosing is, I think everybody knows I drive a Tesla, and just because I drive a Tesla, I'm still a patriot. All right? I think everybody thinks that all Tesla owners are tree-hugging liberals, and that's not the case with me. All right? I drive a Tesla for the gas savings. And I love the technology now at this point in the car. I mean, the technology is unparalleled. The things that I can do with the car are awesome. It drives itself. Literally. It's gotten so much better since the last full self-driving. I'd actually thought about doing a separate channel, calling it Scott's EV channel, which I still might do. I don't know. I'm bored now that I've been in forced retirement. So, anyways, I'm going to show some of the B-roll for Springfield. And I also wanted to offer, if anybody has any stories they want to see done, anything that they want me to look into. I actually had someone from Cleveland contact me relative to a suspicious death that I'm in the process of getting the records for. And I'm more than happy. Like I said, I have a lot of time on my hands. So if anybody out there would like me to look at any type of situation that I might be able to, feel free to send it over to me. Email or signal are the preferred method. So we're going to go into just a couple of minutes of B-roll of Lakemore, so that everybody knows what it looks like and what we're talking about, discussing. And then we'll finish off with, again, I don't have a lot of information on it yet. I've done several public records requests, and it may take forever to come back. So I don't even know when the next update is going to be, but we have the O'Malley and Robert T. George incident, and I was hoping to have something back at this point, even just a offense face sheet, but I don't even have that at this point. So all I have is what's on the media, so I will probably drop, and I honestly was astonished. I think it was Channel 3, Lena Lay, I believe. I think that's how you pronounce it, and I think that's her name, did this story on it, and I almost dropped to the floor. Oh my God, a media outlet in Northeast Ohio talking badly about MikeOMalley? Unheard of. We'll see if she's indicted next. All right, everybody. We're on the last segment here. So welcome back. And I wanted to give you an update. I had talked about briefly an update with the East Cleveland Indictments. And it's going to be for, the officer's name was Lawrence Manns. And if you've been following my show and episodes, I've been talking about how I felt that there's like two people that I feel extremely bad for because they literally did nothing, folks. Nothing. And the county has, in their attempts, Cuyahoga County has wanted this to look like this huge, massive corruption bed of scheme for the city of East Cleveland Police Department. They want you to think that East Cleveland is just so corrupt, and they are the saviors that came down. MikeOMalley with his sword came in, even though most of the cases that have really stuck up to this point were cases that we, the department, sent down, and they sat on for years, and I've shown this in the previous episodes. Please feel free to go back if you don't know what I'm talking about, okay? For years, we knew about certain officers doing certain things, and we submitted it to them years ago, and they waited until all of these other indictments came down to basically make it look like this huge, massive, corruptive conspiracy. But let's talk about Manns for a second. And again, it's very convoluted, and I apologize, all right? So Mans originally gets in. Well, actually, was he re-indicted twice also? I don't know. This last indictment, because they typically just have indicted everybody and then re-indict everybody. And hang on, let me see. I want to give you an accurate. All right, so folks, yes, Mans was indicted twice. The first time, he was indicted on February 28th, 2023. That was his first indictment. And then, of course, you know, as with all of these people, and people, don't take my word for it, it's on the docket. Look at all these cases. This is what's astounding to me, that the media in Northeast Ohio is just totally blind to it. So, you know, they indict the guy in February. He won't take their pleas. So what do? They threaten to re-indict him, and that's what they do. They re-indict him, and they re-indicted him in May 23rd, 2023. So February, he gets indicted. You know, they're going through their pre-trials, and they find out, hey, Mans isn't going to plea like we wanted him to. Oh, shucks. We don't really have a case, but we're going to have to figure something out because we've already made these huge media outbursts of lies. And this isn't honestly the first time they did it. I mean, look at what they did to Tony Viola. His case resounded with exactly what was happening here. And it's like Cuyahoga County is just on the same script. It's the Cuyahoga County special, as Tony always calls it. So, and feel free, if you don't know what I'm talking about there, feel free. Previous episodes, Tony Viola, Don Pasella case. But anyways, so now we're on this current indictment. and we're in August at this point. And so his attorney files files a motion basically for speedy rights violation. All right? He says, hey, you guys can keep continuing these cases. And so just to give you a little background, they indict like 10 or 11 officers. And then they want, for whatever reason, I don't know strategically, I can't even think about it, except to make it look so horrific to a jury. They want initially to try all of these cases at once. So you have 10 officers that are alleged to do different things, all sorts of different offenses, different dates, times, and they want to try them all once together. And it makes no sense to me whatsoever because I've never seen. I almost wanted to see it because I have never seen any trial go forward like that. Usually, a trial is about a specific set of actions the defendant took, and here you have 10 or 11 different defendants, all with different actions, all with different circumstances, and they're trying to try it at once. So there's all sorts of motions that initially go through with different defense attorneys, not necessarily even Mans. Mans doesn't really even file very many motions. And so this is something else I've learned. So when a defense attorney, there's speedy trial rights, right? But when your attorney files a motion, it puts a delay on your speedy trial. Enough of a delay for the judge to essentially review your motion and rule on it. So when defense attorneys actually file motions, it actually pushes the speedy delay back further. So Mans' attorney doesn't really file many motions. There are many motions that are being filed by other defendants. There's all sorts of continuances. The state's pushing for continuance. Let's just keep pushing this out. And so Mans' attorney finally, recently here in August, files for speedy rights violation. So the state responds. Samanthasohl, in all of her glory, all of her ignorance, responds that, well, it's not her fault. It's not her fault that she wanted, all of these motions and continuances that have been brought up by other counsels. It's not her fault. It is your fault. You indicted him. You're the one that wanted him to go on trial with all these other defendants. All right? So, and that's essentially what Manz's attorney responds back to and says, hey, look, it's not my fault that my client is enveloped in these other co-defendants. And it's not my fault that sometimes these other co-defendants have filed for continuance. And just because merely the continuance is granted, it doesn't mean that we requested it. So it should not be held against our speedy rights time. But the audacity, and I'll try to put it up because the audacity of Sammy Sohl and her rebuttal to this is just astonishing. Anyways, it is interesting because now going back and looking at the docket, the motion to dismiss that Manz's attorney filed is withdrawn. And I don't know if that was a requirement that the judge made. Because I don't think that there would be any other way for her to rule on the speedy rights violation. So, but anyways, they offer him disorderly conduct. And he basically has to testify against whatever incident he was involved in. And I know a lot of the other defendants in East Cleveland that are still going are, upset about him doing this, but you have no idea. Hopefully he's going to tell the truth. And if he tells the truth, it's not going to hurt anything. Because the actions that they have indicted these officers on did not occur. So, anyways, it even says that after he's done testifying, that he can apply to get off probation for the disorderly conduct, which is basically like just above a traffic ticket. After he's done with the trial, he can get off probation early. It can be terminated early. And it's I think it's an M4, which is like a disorderly persist. I mean, he's going to be able to get that expunged off of his record. So he keeps his OPATA, his police officer license. He gets found guilty of something. There are actually traffic violations that are higher than M4. Reckless op, DUI. So he got something that's basically the equivalent of a traffic violation. So I think it's a win. And I think it's something to show, again, the Cuyahoga County Prosecutor's Office, MikeOMalley, Samantha Sohl, are barking up this tree. And each one of these cases that we didn't sit down has honestly been a complete failure, in my opinion, to the county prosecutor's office. Look at my case. What is it? 24-25. I was like Al Capone. 24-25 indictments, charges that I had, reduced down to one sales tax violation is what I pled to. I'm still not guilty of that, but I wanted it to go away at this point. So I never wanted to go back into law enforcement anyways. It was sort of a win-win situation for me. So, but they touted me to be, again, worse than Al Capone. So to me, I think it was a failure on their part. Pretty much everybody up to this point that has pled, it's just showing, it should be showing, but the media is not picking up on it, and nor will the media report it. And that's why, leading into our next segue into our next segment, talking about the O'Malley-George connection. I don't know a lot, but there is a gentleman by the name of Robert George, and like I said earlier in the segments, I've public requested a lot of this, but it's going to take probably time for me to formulate and get in. But I am going to drop a new Channel 3 news broadcast relative to the story.
Tonight, we are learning new disturbing allegations being made against prominent Cleveland businessman Bobby George. In a police report, the victim refers to George as her ex-boyfriend. We first reported that she accused George of domestic violence, including smashing her head into a table, strangulation, and shoving a towel in her mouth to keep her from screaming. She claims she tried to leave him multiple times, but at one point, he pointed a gun at her. George is now facing charges including attempted murder and rape. He turned himself in Tuesday, where he posted a bond of $200,000. And now to a 3 News Investigates exclusive with more on the Bobby George case. We have learned that the powerful George family has donated tens of thousands of dollars over the years to the campaign of Cuyahoga County Prosecutor MikeOMalley, whose office is handling George's criminal case. Tonight, there are concerns about a potential conflict of interest. 3 News Investigates poured through dozens of pages of campaign finance reports filed by Cuyahoga County Prosecutor MikeOMalley, who was first sworn in 2017 and is up for re-election in November. We found that the politically powerful George family, headed by businessman Tony George, donated more than $36,000 to O'Malley's campaign over the years, including 2 $10,000 contributions in 2023 and 2024, giving O'Malley a boost to winning this year's primary election last March. Is there a legal ethics issue here?
There's definitely a legal ethics issue here.
Legal ethics professor Cassandra Robertson from Case Western Reserve says, to be clear, there is nothing unusual for an elected prosecutor to receive contributions from people in business or even law.
Prosecutors need money to run a campaign like any elected official. So people will donate. It's very common for lawyers to donate to prosecutors' campaigns.
But what is very unusual is that a wealthy donor's own son now faces felony charges of attempted murder and rape in a case being handled by the prosecutor. Robertson believes that O'Malley should consider recusing himself.
Even in cases where the prosecutor's office is certain they could fairly prosecute it, for those reasons of public perception.
Because already there's been scrutiny over the case when earlier this week, city prosecutors asked for a $100,000 bond for Bobby George, to the apparent surprise of the judge.
I'm not going to do a $100,000 bond.
Who doubled the bond. No word yet whether O'Malley will ask a special prosecutor to handle the George case. Robertson expects many eyes will be watching.
Do we think that the public thinks that the prosecutor could be fair in this circumstance?
We reached out to O'Malley's office for comment tonight, but got no immediate response. We'll keep you posted.
And I was totally astonished. Again, astonished that Northeast Ohio media said something negative about MikeOMalley. And I think if anybody from Northeast Ohio media outlet is still watching this, trust me, continuing to dig into MikeOMalley. I have it on some of the greatest of sources and information. Continue to dig into MikeOMalley. I'm just waiting for it to become a little more concrete for me to start talking about. So there's a guy named Robert George who donated, his family or him had donated a bunch of money to MikeOMalley's campaign. And I did find some articles referencing the amount of money that O'Malley has received in his campaigns. And even, they did state basically that, well, this is sort of a large amount that he received for a local campaign. Not necessarily for Robert George's donation, but just in general, he seems to have collected quite a bit of money for his campaign. I mean, we're talking, thousands and thousands of dollars. But Robert George, I think, makes a donation of $20,000 or $30,000, either he or his family, to O'Malley. And the question is, should O'Malley recuse himself? And the answer is, quite simply, yes. Absolutely yes. There should be no appearance of impropriety. And when you recuse yourself, he also shouldn't be calling in on Dan Caceres, who used to work for the prosecutor's office but now works for the AG's office, because that's not impropriety, or that's not showing transparency. By bringing the same a guy that's worked for the county, Cuyahoga County, back in to Cuyahoga County from the AG's office. I mean, essentially, O'Malley is just running the prosecution. All right, so I did want to, before I put it back out, so as of recording, it's not really recording, is it? I don't know. Is it considered recording on digital media? As of putting this out, I'm looking at the docket. O'Malley has not recused himself, has not asked for a special prosecutor, which should be alarming to anybody. Again, maybe let's get him the benefit of the doubt. Even though I think he's one of the most corrupt people there are in government, but let's give him the benefit of the doubt, and let's say that he doesn't even really know who Robert George is, although his family apparently is very well known in Cuyahoga County. But let's say that it's not affecting his decisions, but it's the appearance of affecting his decision in this prosecution, and that alone should be enough to ask for a special prosecutor. And that's exactly what he should have done in the East Cleveland cases also. There's been officer-involved use of force cases that O'Malley has diverted to other special prosecutors, and ask yourself, why did he not do that in the East Cleveland cases? Probably because no other outside prosecutor would prosecute the cases. They would call him insane. And it had to look tough for his campaign, that it's coming from MikeOMalley's campaign. But everybody, all these other cases, he's referred out. He's referred to other special prosecutors for use of force cases on officers. But anyways, as we get more information on Robert George, we'll come back with it. I also did have a listener send me information, and I almost completely forgot about it. And that was relative to, were there 10? There was a story, I believe, on Fox 8 that came out that was sent to me by one of my listeners. And it was relative to 10 local Cleveland firefighters that were double dipping, which, need I remind you, is definitely a felony. So you have 10 firefighters for the city of Cleveland that are double dipping. Essentially, they're scheduled or clocked in somehow, making money in Cleveland and then working somewhere else. And again, just showing you the comparison. East Cleveland, everywhere else. East Cleveland, everywhere else. Nobody from these firefighters have been touched as far as a criminal investigation. And again, all the more power to them. I don't live in Cleveland. I don't live in Cuyahoga County. All the more power to them. Go out there and double, triple, quadruple dip if you can get away with it. Because apparently nothing's going to happen to you anyways. But if you were East Cleveland, well, you'd probably be indicted. All right, folks, that's it for this week. We'll see you next week. Have a great rest of your week.